Hello and good evening, everyone. Karen's Carrots is here tonight as usual, except for some blackouts sometime or some power outages. But nonetheless, we're happy to be here tonight. I'm Karen Henderson, and I support train EAs in the C suite. We train EAs in the C suite to transform from the typical EA to strategic business partner to their CEO. And tonight we have a CEO with us. And I'd like you to welcome, not only is she our guest tonight, she is my friend. And I am so happy that she is here tonight. We have Miss Donna Hurley. Miss Donna Hurley is here. Actually, she's here by way of the DMV, right?
That's right.
Okay, this is Miss Donna Hurley, CEO of Housing Options and Planning Enterprises, better known as Hope. And Hope is a HUD approved counseling service, or I should say counseling agency, either one.
HUD
And
approved housing counseling agency.
say that again.
A HUD approved housing counseling
Okay,
agency.
okay. A HUD approved housing counseling agency. But nonetheless, she's here with a wealth of information that I'm sure will benefit a lot of people out there in the audience. I'm happy to have her here. And as usual, these guests are so talented and so loaded with information. I let them go ahead and do the deep dive on themselves. Miss Donna Hurley, welcome to Karen's Carrots, and tell the folks a little bit more about you and exactly what you do.
Okay. So HOPE was established in 2005, and the overall objective of what we do is to educate individuals on becoming a successful homeowner. We work with individuals doing one-on-one counseling as far as helping them to create financial well-being, so financial coaching. We also do a lot around home retention, preventing individuals from losing their homes through foreclosure. Right now, we've been heavily involved in rental assistance, helping individuals to stay who are renters to get relief as well. We are also one of the things that we have implemented or that we've created was also a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institute, to help individuals that are not able to obtain a loan, a consumer loan from a bank because of low credit, not having the credentials that banks look for, that we're able to give small consumer loans as well.
Well, I can imagine that service in and of itself is challenging in these times, would you say?
It is very challenging. It's always been, a challenge when you're dealing with individuals who's at risk of losing their home because it's very emotional. Um, you know, and both not only losing their home but becoming a homeowner. You can imagine that an individual who may be first generation of homeowner becoming a homeowner, how they feel through that process. And so educating them, giving them the resources, the tools to help them to be sustainable. And in a lot of cases, it's basic things, like creating a working spending plan, a budget. A lot of times people just don't know what they can really afford. And they end up in a situation working with a lender or a realtor who their drive is that commission check and not necessarily looking out for the best interest of that individual. So we teach them, what can you really afford? Looking at your bottom line, your budget, what you have available, in your lifestyle. Like what is it that you can afford to spend on your mortgage, not to exceed 30%, because that is really the base that a lot of people don't understand, that your housing costs should not exceed 30% of your living of your income. So we teach people how to, know what to look for, what to ask for, the available programs that are there. When I say programs, down payment assistance, things that will help individuals to, purchase their home.
Now, as direct impact to as a direct impact as a result, I should say, of the pandemic. How did the situation shift in your office and you providing these services? Were you able to do it virtually, for instance? I mean, at times when people are not able to come in and it's not even safe, so to speak, due to health risk to come in.
We had to shift very quickly to a virtual environment. Initially, we did a home buyers education program through classes. We would have, two classes a month at different locations, and then all of a sudden, in March, 2020, we had to shut that down, and we became virtual. So we started utilizing Zoom, creating, working with because a lot of our presenters weren't familiar with doing virtual,
Presentations.
presentations either. So for us to, now all of a sudden go to a platform where we're delivering our classes virtually, we're doing our counseling virtually, so we had to come of age very quick, getting the technology in place. And as a nonprofit, having the funds necessary to, implement those type of programs was a challenge as well. But we, incorporated Zoom. We, did some things with Teams where some other resources, some other technology that has helped us to make the transition. My staff, for the initially worked completely virtual. They would work virtual. They would work at home in a virtual environment. So providing them the ones who did not have a computer, the phones, all of that, we had to help them set up to work at home remotely. So it was a challenge, but moving forward, we've learned that it works. That a virtual environment does work, and we will, even though we went back maybe about 3 or 4 months ago into a hybrid environment where people would go in one day a week, but we're going to change that. We're going to up it a little bit and probably do 2 days a week. But we will continue with a virtual environment, a hybrid. We'll call it a hybrid.
Okay. Well, let me shift around a bit and ask that you talk a little bit about you. How did you, Donna, arrive at this position, so to speak, this passion you have to help, having your nonprofit? Give us a little bit of Donna's story.
So my story. Um, I was a licensed realtor. I have been a licensed realtor for over 30 years, and prior to me starting the organization, because I'm the founder of Hope. I started the organization in 2005. But prior to me starting the organization, as a realtor, I did a lot of investment with primarily short sales. I was really an expert in short sale, which meant I was um, taking the equity, and I was taking the equity from an individual and and buying that property and then reinvesting or reselling the property. And people will call it now flipping. So I was doing that, and then it just dawned on me. It was like, people, if they could stay in their homes, they would. And so then it was about, how do I make this a reality? How can I help individuals to stay in their home? And with my experience as a realtor and the ability to negotiate, I was able to start negotiating on behalf of the client or the homeowner with the servicer to help them to get a workout plan, something reasonable for them to stay in their home. And so I grew it from that, me and my son and my daughter-in-law. So it was, my vision, my dream, and I had the support, of my family to help me to make it a reality. And then eventually I was able to start hiring people, to grow the business. You
And
know,
and that's wonderful. And that says a lot. I mean, you started in 2005 and you're still around today, and the world has done practically a 360-degree turn in terms of forcing us to do things that weren't necessarily in the plan, who planned to go virtual, who planned to work at home in mass. That certainly wasn't a plan. And to be able to adapt to that and still provide the services, I think that's quite admirable. What do you see coming on the horizon as we, how do I put it? Because we really can't even say we're nearing an end to the pandemic. Um, it may have gotten a little better on some ends, but what do you see ahead of you in terms of providing the service that you do? And will you have to shift again to provide different services? People losing their job, not having the same income, maybe even going from homeowner to renting. How does that affect the services you offer or that you see you may offer in the future?
So, one of the things that we are expanding into is workforce development or economic development, because I believe that in order for people to afford decent housing, they have to have a decent wage,
Mm,
livable wage,
mm,
and it's really very difficult for individuals who's on, I mean, or a minimum wage. It's not people cannot live comfortably on minimum wage. So what we're looking at is developing a program that will create entrepreneurship or either skills if people aren't comfortable in making that transition. And even prior to the pandemic, we would always talk about what is your other stream of income. You need to have multiple streams of income. So we always address that, but now we're going to just really take it a step further and incorporate an economic development plan to help individuals to really to grow, um, to grow to a point of creating either a business or a different type of profession where they can really sustain themselves and not be on a minimum income.
mm.
We see like in the Washington metropolitan area, a study just recently came out that really showed that a person on minimum wage, that they have to do over 80 hours a week, in order to get a decent income, in order to sustain their home, to be able to afford a two-bedroom apartment, because our housing stock is very expensive.
Has We hear a lot of talk in this particular atmosphere about the rental assistance, about the moratorium on evictions. Have you any experience in terms of how that program has worked? Basically, has it really helped people? How hard an impact is it on the actual homeowner, not the homeowner, the landlord? In these cases, how well is that program working to your knowledge?
It's the program is it has its plus because a lot of money has been made available through U.S. Treasury. So the funds are there. The infrastructure is not necessarily in place here in the metropolitan area. And I am involved in some calls at a federal level. And so I know that there's been a slow rollout in most states, but the
Mm,
funds are there. In some cases, landlords may not be as cooperating, but if the landlord is cooperating and providing all of the information, some of the information, because some of it is the tenant's responsibility. But if the landlord is providing, is working with the tenant, they can get up to 6 to 9 months of rent arrears paid. There's some stipulations here in Maryland because every state is different. But in
mhm.
Maryland, the stipulation is that the landlord has to agree not to evict that tenant after they've received the payment for like a
A
2 month.
given period.
Yeah, so it takes so that gives them some comfort, but in some cases, and we're not exactly sure why some landlords are not cooperating, and it could be, they want to move them out so they can then do a rent increase because we are definitely in that type of a market now.
Yeah, that's most unfortunate. I'm blessed and I thank God that I am. that I haven't encountered those challenges, but nonetheless, I've heard stories of of people, for instance, getting rental assistance. I don't know how the program worked, but the landlord didn't get paid. So I always thought the money was going to the landlord, but the money goes to the renter to pay the landlord.
So it really depends. Again, if the landlord is cooperative, then the payment will go directly to the landlord. But if the landlord does not cooperate, then the payment goes to the tenant and they can do whatever they want with the money.
Ah,
Yeah.
so in essence, if in fact the landlord doesn't sign off on a dotted line, yes, they're 9 months in arrears, and no, I will not evict them for the next year. That landlord will get the payment.
And it's not a year. It's
I
not,
don't know. That's arbitrary.
yeah, it's like a couple of months, that as long
Okay.
as they don't evict them. But right, then the landlord would get the payment directly. But if the landlord does not cooperate, then the payment goes to the tenant.
Okay. Wow. Woo, there's a lot going on. What another situation I heard was there was a period like the first moratorium ended, and I'm asking this for my own curiosity. It ended in July or something, and then it was reinstituted.
No, the final one ended July 31st. It was
Okay,
extended multiple times, but it ended July 31st, and they did not extend the eviction moratorium.
they did not.
They did not. So it ended July 31st. So
Okay,
landlords, started, early August, started the process of eviction.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought it had ended and a window was open for the landlords to start the process, and then it was extended again. Okay.
It did end, and then it was extended, and then it was extended, and the final was July 31st.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Now, for homeowners, let me just add this. For homeowners, there is a program that is going to be rolling out. We're not sure when, but where states will be getting money again from Treasury in order to help bring their mortgage current. Each state had to submit a plan to Treasury on how they're going to manage it, the funds that they're getting. And so we don't know when that's going to roll out. But again, that's under the American Rescue Plan. And for us, they're calling it the Housing Assistance Fund, HAF. And so we're just waiting to see when that money and exactly how it's going to be implemented. So there's help for homeowners as well.
Okay. Okay. Hmm. So tell me, what were your goals for 2021, for instance, before you were impacted by things beyond your control?
So our goal was to do some development, creating affordable housing. And so that's been a challenge because just inventory right now, we're in a seller's market. So there's a shortage of inventory. And then what's available is inflated. So
Hmm.
acquiring affordable housing, acquiring property, and then developing it to resell has been a challenge. But that's our goal, is to create more affordable housing.
You know, you sound like you have a lot on your plate. I'll tell you. What's your administrative support like in the office? Work from home or physical office?
That is a challenge right now because my receptionist that I've had in the past, and I'm trying to be real. She's been very loyal to me, so I want to keep that space open. But she's not comfortable in coming back into the
Oh.
office. One of the challenges that I have is that we're kind of split. Only half of my team has received the vaccine, the other half is kind of refusing and can't mandate it, right? So just looking at how do I, protect the team. So that is also an expense, getting air purifiers and, having all of the cleaning products that's necessary. But it's what we have to do. It's that, it's just a new requirement to have, these PPEs in place.
Now, speaking of the added expense because of this situation, is there funds available for you to get some of the things that are necessary to meet certain requirements and safety?
Yeah. Um, Not so much for that. For well, I shouldn't say that's not the case because you know that there was PPP. The plans came out where actually two different draws was available. Um, the EIDL. So funds have been made available for the disaster. The EIDL was emergency EIDL disaster relief or something. So funds have been made available in order to bridge or to help the businesses, not just nonprofit. Any business was
Mhm.
able to take advantage of some of those things. The PPP we did, round one and round two, and round one was forgiven, and we submitted our paperwork for round two to be forgiven. And as a nonprofit, and I would say maybe any organization that in some cases a disaster like this, like what has occurred, has identified a need for our service. And so because of that, funding is coming, to
Okay.
support our work.
Because it directly impacts the epidemic, the pandemic. It directly impacts that. Wow. And you just spoke of another thing that is extremely important, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And that is people's comfortability with coming back into the office. I mean, that's not something to just dismiss. That's a valid concern. And I've already heard two institutions here in Philly, I believe, two of the universities. I don't know whether to say mandated, but I think I think maybe mandated is the correct word because you have to be vaccinated. Um, they want to know if, for instance, you got your first shot today. They're saying, okay, your second shot should be scheduled by September 15th, and they're like, monitoring that, if you will. So for those who may have that reason, well, not that reason for the vaccination, but that uncomfortability with coming back in the office, suddenly they're coming face to face with economics, the roof over their head, food, and the valid concern feels discounted. I
Yeah.
mean, how do you deal with that as a CEO?
So for me, again, I'm not attempting to mandate it. Whereas I know some businesses, some industries are going in that direction. I was speaking with someone today, and they were trying to get some information about schools, teachers, and even that there's a lot of teachers who are not going back into the school system. So we're going to have a shortage there. So and we see that a lot of places here in Maryland where they're offering stipends or bonuses for in hiring because people just aren't going back to work
They
because of their
have,
fear.
yeah.
One, their fear, and then the other thing I think that in some cases those individuals who were on the minimum wage, they were making more money through the unemployment, that additional funds that they were receiving. Now that that's going away, maybe people will start, go back to work.
Well, interesting you say that because I didn't read this particular article, but I saw the headline, the fact that the unemployment, and I guess in some cases it's been reduced by way of the PUA being ended. The PUA has ended. So the extra won't go into the unemployment, but some people may still legitimately qualify for unemployment. It'll just
Unemployment,
be
right, right.
lower. So you have the fact that the minimum wage doesn't give you decent housing. I mean, not only housing, doesn't provide a decent living wage. Okay, you got that. You got the people who are apprehensive about returning to the office. And then you have a whole set that have had this time to evaluate the situation and reevaluate the situation. And now they're turning inward and saying, what can I do? What can I do to generate some income? So you got some entrepreneur like mindsets coming into the fold. So I say this, as horrible and uncomfortable as this whole pandemic has had, the experience we've had, a lot of good has come out in various ways. I see the good coming out with people rethinking what they can do, how they can generate more income, something they didn't think of before. I see also some good with everybody being at home, and I'm speaking for the good that came out of this. Husbands and wives got to know each other on a level they didn't. Parents got to know their children on a level they may have discounted because they're off for 6 or 8 hours a day and then they return. Now they're all together 24/7.
Yeah.
That might have been a heavy burden in some households, but I've heard stories where there's been some good that came out of that.
Well, for me, I know I gained an extra 25 pounds.
And that is,
That was not good, but
well, that's a common story that we hear. But you know what? You gained the extra 25 pounds. You sitting here smiling, looking wonderful, sharing all this information. And some people aren't up on their feet, able to laugh and share information. So, what's a few pounds? You could leave that in the gym in a couple months or so, right? Put a different meal on the plate. At least that's something that I don't mean to make light of it because everybody's talking about, I didn't go anywhere last year. Now, when I start putting on the clothes I had last year, they don't fit. So we all sat around and ate more.
so, but you're right. I mean, this pandemic has taught us multiple lessons, and some basic things. Better hygiene, washing our hands. I don't know that the mask. How long we will continue to be required to wear masks. There's rumors that we may be in another shutdown soon because of this Delta virus. So, I think that, the bottom line is that, like you said, is that people need to think outside the box on, creating, building some financial well-being, and that is one of the things that a HUD-approved housing counseling agency can help you with. So, we're located in Maryland, but all throughout the United States, there's a HUD-approved housing counseling agency who specialize in what we're doing. The rental assistance, the home retention, the foreclosure, the one-on-one, the financial coaching. So I would recommend to people who are need assistance with maintaining, sustaining their home, is to look up, go to HUD.gov and look up a housing counseling agency in your area that can assist you with your housing need, assist you with building your financial well-being, or if you're not yet a homeowner, which you want to be, because that was one of the things that has truly affected our community of color, is that we own less homes, like home ownership in African American by communities of color is like at 42%, whereas, other cultures is closer to 70%, like 74%. So it's a big gap, there. So we need to look at becoming homeowners, because that is a way for us to build financial well-being, for us to create wealth, and generational wealth, where you can pass that on to our kids. So, I would truly recommend, working with a HUD approved housing counseling agency.
I thank you so much. I mean, you gave more than I could have imagined we could have gotten tonight with the information, really. And I'm sure people out there, will really benefit and glad to hear the fine line. You hear this overarching HUD, everybody know HUD, but do they know all of the services they provide and specifically services that they can benefit from at this particular time? So Donna, I thank you so, so much for being here, for sharing that information. And I would also like to say thank you all for being here. I see some people in the chat. Hello, how are you? Yes, I'll share my information. As I said, I'm Karen, and EAs in the C suite is what I do. I work with individuals to become strategic partners to their C level executives. That's, of course, CEO, CIO, CFO, and a whole slew of other C top executives. And one of the things I like to call my secret sauce, and that's emotional intelligence, which is very important. And one of the first pillars of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And that's what I always start with, because first we have to look inward to find out who we are and what we're about, what makes us tick, what triggers us. And learning that about ourselves enables us to recognize behaviors in other people. And to that end, one of the things is very important in that process is journaling, writing it down. Your feelings, your observations, your dreams, your goals, questions you have about yourself and how you can relate in certain situations. And to that end, I have a journal. It's called 30-day self-awareness journal. You can visit my website, easintheCsuite.com/shop. We are doing pre-ordering now, and I'd love for you to get one, two, three. You can even gift others with them. But it's an excellent tool, really, to write down who and what you're about, where you're going, where you like to go, how you like to get there, and just come out on the other side someone who is more self aware, confident, have belief in themselves, and grow from that point on. So I thank you all once again, folks. We've had Donna Hurley, CEO of Housing Options and Planning Enterprise, or HOPE. She's in the DMV area. And while she's in that area, she certainly provided information that all of us can benefit from on a federal level. And of course, you can go to HUD.org, is it, or is it .gov?
Yeah, my
HUD.gov,
God.
HUD.gov, and get information that's pertinent to your specific geographical area. So, Donna, are there any final words you'd like to leave with our audience on anything you choose?
Just want to say good luck to you all. You know, be safe through this period. And, if it's not you, somebody else can use the information.
Amen to that. Very good. And I'd like to basically echo that same information. It's a day and time where we can see the good, where we can help one another, where we can rise above where we are. And in Michelle Obama's words, when the situation is low, go high. I'm telling you, the air is better there. So once again, Donna, I thank you so much, and we will definitely do something soon. We're way overdue. I know it, you know it, and we're going to make it happen soon. Thank you all. And Judith, I thank you. Judith is in the chat. Judith is my accountability partner, and does she hold me accountable? I thank you so much, Judith. And once again, visit my website, pre-order your 30-day journal. It's a boost to your emotional intelligence. And on that note, I'll say good night to you all, and thanks so much for joining us. See you again next week, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Have a wonderful weekend.
Too. Bye.